Hello and welcome to the Tim Robinson podcast. With me, your host, Tim Robinson. My background is in coaching males to build bodies that they can be happy with, and this podcast mirrors my never-ending quest to optimize human happiness, health, and performance. Each week, we'll get a chance to speak to other experts in the field of health to consolidate our ideas and create a show full of insights to help you go to the next level. Hello and welcome to the Tim Robinson.
Today's episode, I'm talking to Raymond Yong, who is a physical therapist, osteopath, but more importantly than that, he's a guy that has an incredible understanding of the human body. And outside of the specific realm that I love, that I'm super interested in, which is bodybuilding, physical transformation on that kind of aesthetic level, which I'm uber passionate about, and strength training, Raymond has an outside kind of view on it as it pertains to learning how to train and stay healthy so you don't get injured, whether your sport is jiu-jitsu, martial arts, or bodybuilding. Because the thing is, when we do these sports, what tends to happen is injuries can kind of creep up, a bit of wear and tear, a bit of muscular stiffness, and it can almost feel like it's going to force us out of doing what we love. And it's really important to consider other perspectives when it comes to the whole of human fitness. Specifically what we're talking about, movement, not just those specific rigid bodybuilding movement patterns, but things that Raymond believes a human should be able to do. Things like a forward roll, things like running for the bus, things like a bodyweight squat. And you know what? Once we regain the ability to perform these basic functional movement patterns, then a lot of the dysfunction, a lot of the inability that we had when it comes to movement can be corrected. But you know what? It's a broader spectrum than that. And we just dig into it in this podcast. And there's some other bits and bobs, not just movement, but how to really improve your health and basically become the best version of you. So super clued up guy, taught me a load of stuff, which I'm still digesting. So give the podcast a listen and let me know what you think. Okay, so Ray, welcome to episode 5 now of the Tim Robinson podcast, and really, really great to have you on. And before I let our audience hear from you, I'm just going to give you a little introduction. But yeah, I think you're about to say hello there. So yeah, hello.
Hello, how you doing? It's good to see you. You know, I can't believe it's episode 5 of your podcast already. Okay.
I know, man. I know it's a thing now. It's just something that I'm getting into, and I'm super grateful for it, because I think that was part of the reason that I took an interest in the conversation that you had with Neil the other day, and then subsequently being able to learn more about you from your studio. It's been a mind-opening experience so far, so I'm super grateful for it.
Oh, amazing. I mean, it was great chatting to you, and we learn from everyone, and just loving what you're doing, and just keep it going. Actually, that's the most important thing.
Thank you, man. Thank you. I appreciate that, and you as well. Yeah, exactly. I mean, that was really why I wanted to get you on, because I think that my listeners especially can benefit from some of your perspectives, and just like I have. And I think for me, for someone that my main passion when it comes to health and fitness is bodybuilding and muscle building. But as someone that's not a teenager anymore, or is not in his 20s anymore, and someone that has had some injuries, I've had lower back, knee, shoulder injuries, I've become more and more and more aware of the need to modify my training techniques. And just, I guess the word is kind of, I guess you could say holistic, looking at training as a whole integrated practice in order to get the best results. Unfortunately, I became aware it would be amazing if we could just train like a maniac and never get injured. But sadly, I became aware that I couldn't continue doing what I was doing and continue improving. Actually, if I carried on doing what I was doing, it was going to break me. So being able to talk being able to talk to people like yourself and just get a broader picture on fitness as a whole and movement as a whole has been really, really beneficial for me. And it's really helped to change my perspective. Whereas there was a period of time in my life when I thought maybe when I kind of hit 30, I thought I was done. I had shoulder, knee, and lower back injuries. Whereas now I'm thinking realistically, if I look after myself, I can be peaking
around my 50s, quite literally. And so yeah. So it's kind of and you know what, I'm meant to give you an intro, so let me give you that intro. Yes.
Yeah,
So
really.
that that was kind of a bit of an intro. So yeah. So basically, from my awareness of what you do, you're really you help to rehabilitate people, and also I imagine a large amount of what you do is prehabilitation. So getting people into a position where not only can they recover from injuries that they've had, or recover movement patterns, but also shield them from future injuries, basically by getting them moving again properly. And anyway, that's probably what every kind of therapist would claim to do. But to be honest, what really impressed me about you was, number one, your passion. Like, I found it quite intense when I met you, like, but in a really good way. Like, I haven't met this amount of passion. Normally when you hear passion from fitness professionals, it's about like business funnels or setting up this new marketing thing. But for you, it is like pure passion on, like, how can we get the best results, and what do you think about movement? And all of a sudden, you were making my brain really, really work, but it was super enjoyable. And after spending a period of time with you, I was just able to, I just got the vibe from you that you're really about, like, obviously you mentioned you have your personal reasons why you're motivated, but I can just tell that you have a great deal of passion for helping the people that you work with. And it is quite rare, actually. So I'm just really glad to have you on. And also, one of the people I really looked up to in the industry back in the day, Charles Poliquin. You've done some of his courses, so clearly your experience goes back and back and back. So, and also you do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, which means you're a bit of a ninja as well.
I mean, yeah, it's a long time habit, man. The Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is just it's interesting. It started off with passion back in the day, actually, when I started to kind of creep my interest into kind of mixed martial arts. It was that's where it stemmed from. I'd like to say thanks to the guy that actually introduced me to the idea and the notion of doing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. It was a guy called Burton Richardson, and back in the day, he was one of the first pioneers, along with there's a team of guys. They're called the Straight Blast Gym. Like Conor McGregor trains with the Straight Blast Gym, but the Straight Blast Gym guys and Burton Richardson were some of the first guys to really kind of embrace the mixed martial arts model on a broader scale, if you see what I mean. So yeah, that's where I got my passion for Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and kind of mixed martial arts and stuff. So yes, it's been a long time. It's been a long time. It's taken me back. I actually only remembered it when I was having a chat with a friend, going, "How did you get into kind of all of this?" And I was like, "Oh my days, it's been a while. It's been a while." So that was like 25 years ago, something like that.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, so when I met you, I was quite shocked. 25 years ago, because I was quite shocked when you told me your age. I mean, as far as we look like with about the same age on the screen, but you're actually like 41, did you say?
44.
There you go, 44. And do you think the fact that you're looking so young is genetics, or is it actual lifestyle as well?
I don't get me wrong. I mean, I think a lot of South Asian people look younger than they actually are, but it's also the lifestyle. I definitely believe it is the lifestyle. My whole family, my wife looks young, my kids look young. So, we hopefully, living proof of what I believe in terms of how you should live your lifestyle and how you should be. I mean, if you want to get the most out of it, if that's your bag, if you see what I mean, as opposed to, non-judgmental upon whatever anybody wants to do. But, for me, I guess the real difference is, I'm sure as a youngster, we've been there, you can go out, you have the food, and you go out and have a tear up on the night out with your friends and stuff like that. And older now, like, I don't drink alcohol anymore. My wife and I have both kind of for health reasons, and just for the way we feel. And looking after our little one has been presented quite a few challenges. My youngest, he has more needs than the elder two. And so, trying to, in the past, trying to like meet his needs when we're kind of feeling a bit cloudy from the night before of maybe a little bit too much drink and some bad food, just doesn't work for us. So, like it's the perspective of just feeling so much better and having the energy and waking up positive in the morning and going, actually, I still have loads of energy today and I feel really good about the day. It's more of those simple things that you're looking forward to. And then from me personally, it just enriches everything else in life. It makes me enjoy my movement even more because I have the energy and the clarity of mind and the positivity in my mind to approach everything that we do. So that's one perspective. But I guess from a professional point of view, yes, I run a clinic that specializes in like osteopathy and physiotherapy. But I'd like to think now, especially how we work, is we're kind of wellness and lifestyle specialists as well. And we want to try and make sure that we can help all of our patients, if they're interested, provide them the opportunity to maximize the possible nutritional benefits they can get from life, to maximize the mindfulness training and aspects of their life, to maximize the movement and the stress management and the habit formation, like the cognitive behavioral science. So we try and do all of that if people decide they want to try and go down that path with us, or even one part of the path with us. That's what we try to encapsulate in its totality at our clinic.
Yeah, man. And that was, again, one of the things that really impressed me when we spoke, because in this field of, when you mentioned the kind of mindfulness and positive psychology, and I really think that that's something great that you're doing, because it's all, it's all really well, me having done all this meditation, being able to connect with prana and kundalini energy or whatever, and all these kind of terms but the thing is, they're not quantifiable through scientific data, which it can be really, really hard sometimes to get buy-in from people that are very, very analytical, or even just a little bit analytical. And that's one of the things that when we spoke, it really spiked my interest, because you were talking about the field of positive psychology and how it's creating data to actually, so that you can communicate to clients in terms of data. And yeah, is there any kind of reflection that you would want to give on that?
Well, the great thing is that the science is really progressing with all of that, and we now actually have tools commercially available to us all that can help us start to monitor all of these things. Okay, like just off the top of my head, one of the things that you can start to measure now is heart rate variability. That's one of the most easily accessible tools that you can use, and you can actually correlate, and you can actually assess, and you can actually find really great benefits, and find out how your mindfulness, your meditation, your breathing practice actually affects and positively encourages the restorative aspects of your body, and you're getting data from all of it. Okay, so like there are tools now that you can actually use to do this, and with some of my more corporate patients and clients at our clinic, that's what we're starting to encourage them to use more, so that they actually have some data. And one of the most difficult things with training and just generally with kind of lifestyle management is how do we know what we feel or what we think is actually genuine to what's happening in our body? And like, this is why lots of people, when they're learning something new, especially if it's a skill-based thing in terms of training, they do it in front of the mirror, because they're trying to correlate the visual stimulus with what they're doing in terms of the movement. And so they're going, oh, okay, so I think and I feel that what I'm doing is actually happening in real life, and the mirror is providing confirmation of that. Well, in terms of your health, we're starting to get loads of tools that can actually assess and measure our data. So if I'm feeling pants and I look at my HRV and I go, oh, okay, this doesn't say it, then it might get me to start to think, well, why am I feeling a bit rubbish then, if it's not my nervous system? But obviously, you know, there's a pinch of salt with various modalities, because technology can always be wrong sometimes. And so you have to, you know, with any sort of new technology, you have to kind of find what the middle ground is with things and connect it through experience of use with yourself as well. But yeah, I mean, like the one thing I'd recommend for you at the moment, if you want to start to try and do that, try to assess all of these things, is start to have a look into kind of heart rate variability assessments and stuff. And you know, there's loads of tools that can start to use that. Fitbit have a heart rate variability part. Apple Watch have a heart rate variability app that you can measure. For me, the one that I've been recommended the most is that's commercially available. There's two products. One of them is called Whoop, and then the other one is called Aura Ring.
Okay. And for our listeners, what is heart rate variability?
Okay, so heart rate variability is basically an assessment of, so you've got two parts of your nervous system that that are responsible not for movement, but for the kind of general organ function and restorative function into your body. Okay, and it's called your sympathetic nervous system and your parasympathetic nervous system. Okay, and your sympathetic nervous system is part of the fight or flight mechanism into your body. And so, you know, it's basically how your body gears it up for kind of higher levels of stress, but it does, you know, it serves lots of different functions. And then you have the parasympathetic nervous system, which is kind of like the yin to the yang of the sympathetic nervous system, if you see what I mean. And it's more responsible for restoration, recovery. And what heart rate variability does is that they've actually correlated that the speed at which your heartbeat, the rate, your heartbeat rate is a very good indicator of your, basically, of what state your nervous system is in, whether it's in a parasympathetic state or whether it's in a sympathetic state. Okay, and so what they do, and what they've actually discovered, is that the greater the variability of how your heart beats throughout the day, the healthier your body is. This is the irony, because you'd think, oh, if I'm really healthy, my heart would stay the same rate the whole day. And what they've actually discovered with heart rate variability is that the more varied your heart rate is throughout the day, I mean, in a healthy fashion, okay, the healthier you are and the faster you recover. And it's telling us that your nervous system is actually more attuned to your environment to calmly respond. And also, you know, I use it for a lot of my patients to find out whether there's periods of time outside of sleeping that their body is able to engage into periods of recovery. Like what you may find is that there's lots of people, when they're just sat at their desks through the day, because their job is overstimulating,
right,
their body is never able to go into a restorative state. Okay, so you know, so you're therefore just relying on the time that you sleep for your body to restore itself. And if you're going through a heavy training process, like say you're going through a cycle of really kind of trying to build some muscle, that might not be enough to help your body recover for the next training session. You know, and this is why people are saying you need to start to take breaks in between work, give your mind a break, to get away from the desk for a period of time. And then using tools like heart rate variability, you actually have physical data to go, I need you to do this, so that at least your body is starting to be able to get into a more positive state at regular times throughout the day, as opposed to just being in some sort of recovery state only when you sleep. So it's for me, it's extremely exciting tool that can start to be used. And we're only at the beginning of what we can find out about this tool and how we could use it and how we can kind of accumulate the data and stuff. And that's just one tool. There are there's other tools, but they're less accessible for normal people. If you look at the research done for psychoneuroimmunology at the Institute of Health in America, they're looking at kind of tiny markers and like blood markers and stuff, or or cellular markers. Obviously, that's not accessible for most people on a daily basis. So we're really looking for practical tools every day that can basically help you monitor yourself. If you're the type of person that needs data, like I've met many people that are very in tune with their body, and it's taken them years to get to that process of being in tune with their body. And so they know as soon as they wake up, going, okay, I'm feeling less recovered, things aren't working as they should, so I'm going to tailor my training and a few bits and pieces, or I might change what I do or the balance of what I do in that day to try and encourage my body to get back into a healthier, balanced state again. So it really depends on where you are in terms of understanding yourself, what type of personality you like. I'm not going to sell an HRV concept to an extremely experienced yogi per se, who's very responsive and sensitive and aware of their own body. So I find it a great tool, but just who decides to use it, that's more of a personality thing.
No, it sounds like an amazing tool, because it can just give someone very direct feedback on the as you say, the variability, because presumably if they're if they're in a sympathetic state, they're very like stressed all the time, even though stress can be positive and negative. If they're very stressed all the time, presumably they need more recovery beyond sleep throughout a day in order to optimize their results, or at least
exactly.
And so carry on.
And like for you, especially if you have bodybuilding type clients and they want to be getting results, and you may and then you get stuck at a certain point going, look, they're doing everything right, they're trying to sleep right, they're doing their nutrition right, but they've hit a wall and they need to find out why. Then it actually starts to help you find and accumulate some data it also requires you to peer into the life of that person, because if they're training, if they're doing a heavy training session, okay, at a period of time where their nervous system might be exhausted because they've been stressed all day, then the heart rate variability data may be able to give you an insight into what's going on.
That's incredible, and that's really useful right now. I'm just thinking about one of my clients right now that this could be really useful for. And it's and when we talk about training, nutrition, and lifestyle factors, we can track nutrition quite closely. We can track training with reps and sets, etc., rate of perceived exertion. But when it comes to stress, this sounds like an incredible tool to really to prescribe. Even you can even make changes on a day-to-day basis, presumably on the feedback you're getting, I imagine.
Yes, completely.
Absolute game changer. Definitely going to be looking to integrate that. And another thing I like about it as well is, I've been recommending people, not recommending, but I've been talking about the benefits of meditation and talking about the benefits of, even though I don't really practice that much, but I've experienced enough like yoga, to my clients or friends as a tool of relaxation. But actually, perhaps if you can just present them with a set of quantifiable data that says, this is how much you're relaxing, can we get it from here to here? Choose your method, because it's required to help you build, essentially, because as you said, you're doing the nutrition bit, you're doing the training bit, or presumably relaxing is gonna free up some headspace so that they can optimize those other areas even further.
Yes, completely. And it's a really great tool. I would check it out. What I'd say is try and find the tool that works for you, okay, what the needs are and stuff like that. Like I found, you can easily find case studies done by various people on the different types of HRV bands or heart rate variability assessment bands and stuff like that as well. So, like, yeah, spend a bit of time for you personally, just finding what works best for you. And, it's, I'm very much one of those people that I always treat myself as a guinea pig first.
Yeah.
So, literally, I'll do the heart rate variability assessment tools and spend a bit of time and find out. And, it's interesting learning about yourself and finding out about yourself and kind of, and with all of the training, it's the same thing. It's like use yourself as a guinea pig and then expand it from there once you've had some experience working on yourself with it,
Yeah, but that's so valuable what you shared there, and I definitely will be a guinea pig for myself over the next few weeks. I've heard people talking about heart rate variability, but it's more like I've heard the word thrown around quite a lot, but I've never heard it expressed so in such a clear way as to why it would be beneficial for clients and for myself. So thanks for that. Okay, I guess the next really interesting thing that we can go into is when we met you, we spoke about how a lot of people that do bodybuilding, even if they're in it for the sustainable long term, they just repeat these same movement patterns and they get a lot of injuries. And what I've been doing is I've been kind of warming up in a more dynamic way, more like trying to get my muscles elastic. And it's almost because intuitively, I don't know how, but I just knew that if I carried on doing what I was doing without doing some dynamic work, I was gonna run into some problems. And so I started doing some dynamic work and just moving in movement patterns that I wouldn't normally do in my bodybuilding, and moving more explosively, I guess you could say. And it's not like I'm completely out of the woods. I still have to train very, very mindfully when I do my bodybuilding, but my body feels so much healthier as a result. And what's really interesting as well, because I know we spoke about what would you call it, like controlled articular rotations, kin stretch. And it was funny because a lot of people used to do kin stretch at my gym, and I could see it has some value. Like it's a pretty cool training tool, but at the same time, I just felt like seeing people doing these extreme controlled articular rotations. It looked cool, but I could just feel in my body like I needed to do dynamic work for my whole body, and no one had ever really explained like why to me. And then you started asking me questions about tendons and making me do some thinking. And you said to me, you asked me a few questions about tendons, like why do we have tendons? And I think the answer I gave to you was so that we can make our muscles have more force, because the tendon's somewhat elastic, which pulls on the muscle, which creates more force. Which anyway, but through giving the answer, it triggered me to have a bit of a realization, which I think you later confirmed, which is that basically our tendons are, well, they're not made out of elastic, but they have like a stretchy capacity in them. And if we don't train that stretchy capacity is where most of the time injuries occur around tendons, right?
I mean, like, again, like the one thing that I will say is that injury occurs if it's a movement-based injury through basically your body not being prepared for the type of movement that you're wanting to do. Okay, so let me give you an example. Okay, if you trained just squats with a barbell, all right, and then you started heavily investing in some basketball, playing basketball or volleyball, which required a lot of jumping, even though the actual muscles are working similar to that of a squat, because the actual timing and the force development of the different tissues into your body have not been conditioned for that exact type of behavior previously, you're at an increased risk of injury because your body is just not familiar with that type of training. So in other words, like you can't, as a baseline, depending on the patient, yes, I would, if someone couldn't even squat and they wanted to do some basketball, then I would say, yes, let's start with a squat because it's very, very simple. But if all I did was just keep them at a squat, but didn't actually start to train some sort of jumping and landing type patterns, then I'm not going to be adequately preparing any part of the tissues of their body to appropriately meet the demands of playing basketball and jumping and landing and moving around the place. That's essentially what will happen. Is we have a saying at the clinic, there's no such thing as a bad movement. There's only such thing as your body not being adequately prepared for the movement that you're trying to do. Okay, so if you want to learn how to do the splits and then start to twist your body in there, if you spend years and years conditioning your body and basically adapting your body to the movements that you're doing, those movements won't become unsafe for you anymore. Okay, because that's the nature of how the body does. It adapts if you do it at a pace and at a level of progression that allows your body to recover and adapt to the stimulus that you're trying to do. Okay, that's what will happen. Most people will get injured if they've not adequately prepared their body for the task that they're wanting to do. So, so yes, if all I did was train squats, or if all I did was train, even like we'll even go like for calf raises. If all you did was just did loaded calf raises, okay, and then I got people to jump off a step and jump onto a step and jump off a step, and I got this to do it at a volume that was really high, then the likelihood is that either things are going to be very sore, or the risk of injury, because they haven't been progressively prepared for that, is going to be much, much higher.
Yeah.
That's not to say that they will get injured. It's just to say that they're at an increased risk of injury. I don't know who's going to get injured and, or who's not going to get injured. It's our job as movement experts is to go, right, well, how do we help our clients prepare themselves for daily life so that if they want to run down the road, their body is prepared for that. And unfortunately, even though you may not like running as an activity, I can't like at the clinic, we actually say that running is a basic life skill, and everyone needs to at least be able to run somewhat without having to come and see a physio or an osteopath after they've done the pursuit. The amount of patients I've had in the past where they go, I was sprinting for the train and then something just went. Okay, what that tells me is that, okay, like, you're not, maybe we need to prepare that person a little bit better for doing that. Because, I'll look at you ever find yourself in a burning building, you need to be able to, from cold, or it would be more desirable from cold for you to be able to run out of that building without having to go see a physiotherapist or an osteopath afterwards because something went in or snap or crunch, because you were because you were doing something that you haven't appropriately adapted your body for. So that's basically the principle there, is that you'll get injured if you're not prepared for it, essentially.
Yeah. And what I think is really interesting as well is that I definitely want to integrate into my training consciously is which most people don't have a concept of. I'm pretty sure most people don't have a concept really of it in the bodybuilding world, which is the idea of general physical preparedness, and actually establishing a baseline level of conditioning. And if you ask me a year ago or 2 years ago what baseline level of conditioning was, I would think you can do a certain amount of running maybe, or you can do a certain amount of cardiovascular exercise. But when we had the conversation about what, say, the Russians in the Soviet weightlifting program or the Soviet sports program considered as general physical preparedness, and the Soviets, they were like miles ahead of everyone else at that time, right?
Yeah.
It was movement patterns like running, I think forward rolls, monkey bars. It was moving in all kinds of different directions. And they would have that as a prerequisite for every single athlete to basically to enable them to, well, I guess prepare their nervous system, but enable them to, and everything you just described, but for as a method of injury prevention as well.
Yeah, pretty much. And like, yeah, I guess this is the real difficult thing that we have nowadays is that, you know, like, yes, specialization. If I'm a tennis player, specialization within my field of tennis is advantageous. Okay, I'm not going to do specific swimming drills to be able to improve my tennis. But what we're finding at the clinic here anyway is that we like one of the things that we're starting to do, and we're getting a more of a reputation for, is working with kids actually, and taking them through a kind of general physical preparedness program for all of the kids, so that they and they've responded so incredibly well in their sport. It's great. And we didn't do anything specialist. What we did is we just started to get their brains light up and their bodies start to light up, because it's like they're starting to explore and do things that their bodies may not have been suitably prepared for prior to that. Okay, so you know, for most everyday average people, I would say the kind of principles of general physical preparedness is more important in terms of safety and injury prevention than the specialisms. The only thing is that it, like, you know, from a behavioral point of view, people are going to be far more motivated to do their specialist training because of the love of their sport. You know, I have several Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu athletes that come to me, and you know, I work with a few different Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu guys, and you know, relaying the importance of what they need to do back to their sport obviously motivates them. So you can understand why they go, right, I'm going to specialize in my field because that's where my motivation is. But I think the education and the skill for the practitioners to be able to relate, going, well, look, we need this real important foundation. And, you know, if you can't, like, think about it this way, if someone can't squat well and lunge well, okay, and in running, if you see someone that's a recreational runner, if they can't actually lunge well, okay, how safe do you think it is for them to run? Because like lunging is basically asking yourself to go, right, well, can they manage forces properly through the legs? Does the management of the force through their legs and through their body, is that reflected in how well they're able to relax and gently balance their core and their posture? Okay, and you know, is it done in a behavior that's in line with their goals of running, if you see what I mean?
Yeah, I completely do. And because they used to say that running is a series of controlled falls, and in the same way, a lunge is an absolutely controlled fall. You know, you're lunging, and if you can't control a lunge, what business have you got taking a similar movement pattern and spreading it over miles and miles or kilometers and kilometers?
Yeah, and you know, and you know, the real skill and the clever part of it is actually adapting the lunge to start to simulate more of the balance demands, the timing demands of running as well. Because if you think about it, the contact of your foot is microseconds with running.
Yeah.
So, you know, are you able to start to get the, like, because, you know, how many people have you seen where they're in the lunge and they've got too much weight with their lunge? And then, like, so what you see is they kind of lunge, and then it's like they've done it's like the lunge is broken down into like 3 movements. It's like standing, you drop down into the lunge, you go down, you know, you drop down into lunge, you feel a bit stuck. So you have to kind of create some momentum to try and get you back up.
Yeah.
But if you think about it, when you run, the Russians called it rate of force development. Okay, so how fast are you and how skilled are you at being able to develop the level of force to be able to replicate the demands of your sport? So a lunge where you have excessive load and you're going really slow, and then you're having to recreate extra momentum to come back up. Like, think how much time that lunging foot has been in contact with the ground.
Right.
Okay. does it replicate? Like, it's not to say that that lunge isn't useful, but it's just to try and open people's minds up to start to go, okay, there's other ways of lunging that will also be very good in assisting the injury prevention of my patient or my client, basically. That's what I'm trying to kind of highlight at the moment. And that simply just putting load through a leg, irrespective of the timing demands of the lunging foot, okay, means that you're missing out on a whole kind of possible range of benefits that you can provide your patient or your client when you're training them, if they have the goal in mind to improve running, basically.
Yeah. And I think that's very important what you said about relating it back to the actual goals of the client. Yeah, I'm diving back a little bit because that's especially what piqued my interest with what you were saying, because it's just the understanding that it's almost accepted within, say, bodybuilding as a sport, that we are past a certain age or past a certain amount of experience, you start to accumulate wear and tear that's going to gradually slow you down. But it's pretty much no one is doing general. I mean, I know you get some conjugate powerlifters that are doing general physical preparedness, but within bodybuilding, I don't think anyone is consciously. I don't really know anyone that's consciously doing general physical preparedness. Maybe in Russia, and I see that as an absolutely massive portion of fitness, if you like, that is being. People could potentially go a lot further if they were integrating this into their bodybuilding practice, because they could progress for longer, because they could stay injury free for longer. I mean, would you? What were your thoughts on that?
I totally agree with that. I mean, like, I remember speaking to some of the old time bodybuilders. You've got to realize that bodybuilder, like any sport, I consider professional bodybuilding, that is a sport.
Yeah.
And the problem is that it's suffered like what other sports have done, which is the over specialization too quickly. Yeah, because you go back to like the real kind of like originators of the sport of bodybuilding, and I mean the true originators of the sport of bodybuilding, and they did bodybuilding as an addition to the sports that they were already doing. Do you see what I mean? It's like I can't remember the name of the bodybuilder. I do remember speaking to some of the old timers. They're going, yeah, some of the old school bodybuilding champions, they could like run marathons, and they could do gymnastics, and they could do like other bits and pieces. And you saw the diversity. I mean, like wasn't it Arnie who was showing his various breathing exercises and the vacuuming of his tummy and stuff like that, and the versatility. Yeah. So like, and that's amazing skill. He's learned how to manipulate his body. He's got control over his own muscles to be able to voluntarily and adaptively change, like control his body. Because that's like, that to me was like what bodybuilding was amazing for. So many of them were really versatile and really well skilled, and had a great connection to their body. They could feel things, they could make things, do things, and all they did is they go, right, I can feel all these things, and I've got control of my body, so I'm just going to add more load into it with the purpose of growing the muscle. But they never lost that skill element of the self-control and the self-awareness within their body. So that's my interpretation of kind of the more old timers of it. And then what happened was the evolution of the sport came to more of the exaggeration of the muscular factor. And I think a lot of people just kind of pushed that aspect of bodybuilding aside, because they didn't see a direct correlation to the goals of what they needed in order to maybe like build a bigger muscle, Yeah. So that's my interpretation of it. But totally, general physical preparedness, in my opinion, would be a great addition to that. And also, it's like, it'll be a great variation for bodybuilding as well, especially when people are wanting to do it more recreationally. A little bit of variety into your training and different ways, and if you're sticking with it, seeing how it can actually possibly improve the development of your physique and your bodies and your body as well. But you know, like, you don't know until you try, basically.
Yeah, well, a lot of it's really fun as well. That's the thing.
Yeah.
You know, for example, like when you were showing me that exercise where you lie down and stand up.
Yeah, I know. It's a great cardiovascular tool. It's so good. It's like, and you know, it's so simple, and anyone can do it. There's no barriers to entry for it as well. And actually, as I said, as I was telling you, I think the action of lying on your back and getting up to a standing position is one of the most essential basic movement skills that everyone needs in order to be able to maintain their autonomy as a human being. What we found at the clinic is the patients of ours who have lost that ability are the ones that have required external care the most. Okay, like when they've gotten older, because there's a fear of falling. If they fall, number one, obviously the impact of the fall. Number two is the loss of balance, because they've that increase of fear, because they've lost the skill of balance. The fear of falling is increased because they don't feel they have the skill to be able to rebalance themselves. But the third thing as well is they find themselves on the floor, they don't know how they're going to be able to get back up again.
Yeah. Well, yeah, all of that makes sense. Yeah, no, I think it's really exciting, this conversation we're having, because, you know, one of my things is sustainable. Don't get me wrong, I love the kind of body transformation before and after, because I used to be overweight when I was younger and I went through a body transformation. So part of my heart has always been attached to that kind of that visual progression. But I think it's really, really exciting that integrating these elements into bodybuilding, and I think people will get a lot out of it. And it's interesting because right now I think there's two factors, which is that, as you say, with all sports, they've become specialized. You know, tennis or swimming, they all get very, very specialized, and bodybuilding is no different. The other thing as well I'd offer, just as a thought, it just popped into my head, is the absolute, like, you could almost say consumer demands, or the product that's been made for the consumer to then buy, which is the whole arisal of the 8 and 12-week body transformations. And they're very much selling, like, come in, do a load of training, get the result as quick as you can. But we're just completely missing this whole part you're talking about, I feel.
Yeah, I mean, like the motivation behind human beings is a very complex science at the end of the day. Okay, but one of the things that I feel that motivates people is that they need to be able to see the reward. Okay, and so, like, training general physical preparedness doesn't have immediate obvious reward depending on what level of preparation you have at the end of the day as well. But when you take someone through a body transformation process, they immediately see the change in reward. So it's strange, actually, because, like, from when I was, you know, like even just a year and a half ago, when I was looking much more deeply in how do I help motivate people to sustainably stay within the activity, or just with movement in itself. Okay, one of the tools and one of the things that I've really started to think, well, actually, it's a great embracement, which is like the 8 to 12-week transformation process. If it helps get you to put your foot through the door, okay, then amazing, you know, because it makes people move and engage in some form of movement, okay, that will basically, it makes them engage in movement that they thought may never have done before. All right. And then I just think that the job of the coach or the personal trainer or something like that is that in that 12-week process where they're seeing the results, that is your opportunity and the time for you to go, well, look, there is so much more to it than this. Okay. And like, but it's also the explanation of, like, usually when you go through a 12-week transformation process, okay, because your body is in a healthier state than it was, going, well, like, do you want to keep yourself feeling this great?
Yeah.
Okay. But if you rely it purely on the, you know, and I know, okay, especially even professional bodybuilders, you never keep your physique at the optimum state the whole time because it's just not sustainable, right? And so you need to, you know, we need to educate, in my opinion, I think we need to educate these people to not purely rely on the physical form to as the motivation to keep them with movement in the first place. And that's what I mean by the education, is to educate people to go, well, there's more to being healthy and moving well than just how you look. The difficulty is that it's just not as instantly gratifying, but in the long term, it has so much more value to you through your life. Okay, that's not to say that looking good is not important, because our sense of self is very important. How we see ourselves and how other people see us is very important. So, you know, I think it does a disservice as well to say that it's a bit shallow, or it's a bit, you know, because it's not as simple as that. The only thing that I would say though is that you know, it might be a great, this is the eternal conundrum that I have, is how do I explain to other people, right, that what are these other benefits, and just stick with these other or start to look for these other benefits in movement and training and being healthy and having a positive lifestyle that is not instantly gratifying. And the only way that you can use that as an example is by observing and seeing other people, and they're going, well, what's their magic sauce? Because, you know, they might not be massive, or, you know, you look at that yogi and they look great, but there's something about them. They have an aura about them, and their energy is great, and emotionally they're a really well balanced person, and it's like, I want some of that. And unfortunately, the reality of it is that to get that part of it is more of a journey than the instant gratification that we see, especially that's sold within kind of modern social media and, you know, like, and the internet at the moment. And, you know, that's one of my biggest motivators for why I run the clinic and I start to release the programs, because it's like, I want other people to enjoy those less obvious, but just as tangible benefits in the long run.
Yeah, and I think what you said there is a really, really good point as well. Like, actually, an 8 and 12-week body transformation is an amazing, you know, you meet someone where they're at, basically, and that's, you know, and that's great, because essentially they wanna, you know, when we work with people, we're always working to get them out of pain, and whether that's out of the way that they feel about their body aesthetically when they look in the mirror, or whether it's the physical component. But yeah, you can only really meet them where they're at, and I think you're right. That is the service that that kind of faster body transformation would do. But then it's, as you say, it's the role of the coach or the trainer to then educate them on some of those other areas. What I would say, having worked with you a little bit personally, is that just the experience of moving. And then, as you say, like, you know, when we did that movement drill where you were trying to get me to stand up on one leg, and then you showed it to me, and I was like, and you made it look a little bit easier than I did it. And I was like, well, I want to do it as easy as you can do it, you know? And that kind of opened the door in my consciousness to an extent, you know? Yeah. So it's a tricky one to, I guess, yeah, it's a tricky one, because how do you, people see these yogis, as you say, walking around with a certain je ne sais quoi, because they've got their physical health. But it's, how do you quantify that that person that they're looking at, how do you quantify their experience of life, which you can sense it, but how do you quantify it and relate it in terms back to that person that wants to get there? That's kind of what you're saying?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, what I was basically saying is that it's those benefits, those things that we see, those positive characteristics within people.
Yeah.
They can be achieved by that person.
Yes.
But it's just not as instantly achievable.
Yes.
And it's not as instantly obvious as physical changes into your body through a kind of 12-week transformation process. Do you see what I mean? And like, so that's basically what I'm saying, is that hopefully if you take the step towards transforming how your body looks, then the next progressive step will be to hopefully transform the way that you feel on a regular basis. You know, every day it's about finding ways to help you emotionally feel better every day, okay, as opposed to 1 day out of 5, you know, because like, you know, as we know, the reality of it is initially the changes physically into your body will make you feel better about yourself. But if you just rely on how your body physically looks to make you feel better about yourself, then obviously something's missing, you know. And so, you know, but that's not to say that you can't find it, and movement and mindfulness and all things related to movement are really wonderful tools to help you find it, you know, but just in a different way. It's just looking at movement in a different way. It's just looking at, like, I guess just using movement as a tool to be able to understand and explore yourself as a human being. That's how I use it at the moment.
And you know what the wonderful thing is? Let's say hypothetically someone is still stuck in that stage of, I want to look better and this is all I care about. You could then use the heart rate variability piece to introduce them to mindfulness, because you can demonstrate to them quantitatively how that will actually improve the way that they look, because it'll help their recovery. And then they're going to start to experience more of those benefits that you've just been describing.
The only thing that I would say, which is great, yes, definitely, I completely agree, but the results from them doing the mindfulness will not come immediately. That's the thing. You have to get them to buy into the process. Okay, so the HRV data will help you do that, but then they go, well, I'm not seeing it in the gym. And it's like, well, the body doesn't change that instantly, especially from kind of like a hormonal basis, because you've got to realize that your sympathetic and your parasympathetic nervous system, they have influence upon like the cyclical patterns of your hormones as well. And so, you know, like and adaptive changes to like the physiology of your body. Sometimes, like, let me put it this way, okay? After your body's had its training experience of 2 years or more, okay, how fast do the muscles grow in your body after you've been training for 2 years? If you've been doing bodybuilding, do you see what I mean? It doesn't grow that quick anymore. Like, you have this sudden change within a 2-year period, but after 2 years, if you've been diligently doing it, how fast, do you know what I mean? How quick do the changes happen?
It slows down.
So can you see it's not an instantly gratifying process? So the fact that you've gone through in other words, that change doesn't happen immediately. And so if people are relying purely on the observational or the visual change that they see, or the changes of the weight and the scales, they might not persist with the process long enough for them to truly get the benefit from it. Yeah, and this is what I mean by the education again, from the therapist or the personal trainer or the movement specialist and stuff. And you know, it's to make them realize, okay, we need to invest in the process to be able to really to make change once it's in a what if you've been doing this thing for a longer period of time. It's one of the things that is the most frustrating things about the sport Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu that I do, actually, because like you, like you don't see the change day to day, and even week to week, or even month to month.